Welcome back, Epic 7 players. Pat here with another how to play video, and in this one we're going to be talking about the 6th world heir that you totally let die when you first started playing this game in the tutorial, Ruele of Light. As with all of my videos, I'm going to be doing a comprehensive breakdown going over the stats, skills, endgame builds, as well as some pointers on how to use her in World Arena. Alright, let's get to it. Ruele of Light is a light soul weaver of the Pisces zodiac symbol, which means she shares a stat line with Roanna as well as Blood Moon Haste. When we take a look at her actual stats, she has 621 attack, 5,474 health, 98 speed, 798 defense, 15% critical hit chance, 150 critical hit damage, 5% dual attack chance, and no effectiveness or effect resistance. This translates to the second highest health amongst all 5-star soul weavers in the game, as well as the highest defense amongst all heroes in Epic 7. These bulk stats are absolutely fantastic for a character that just wants to survive, and when we look at her actual skill set, you'll understand that as long as she survives, you'll probably end up winning any match that she's in. As a couple of fun facts before we move on to the actual skills, if you guys do not know, in the English dub of Epic 7, Ruele of Light is voiced by Erica Lindbeck, who is the voice of Final Fantasy VII Remake's Jessie, as well as a few characters from the Fire Emblem franchise. She also voices Destina in Epic 7. And if you guys do not know, Ruele of Light's real name is actually Ruele Destina. Ruele's S1 is key to an oath, which may sound familiar to you, and that's because it has the same name, function, and animations as Destina's S1. The only difference between these two moves is actually the damage multiplier. Ruele's damage multiplier is 0.81 attack, as well as 7% of her maximum health. It also heals the character on your team with the lowest amount of HP currently by 7% of that character's maximum health. And based on the Molagoras, it can increase to 8.75% of that character's maximum health. Her S2, Light Pillar, is 3-turn cooldown regardless of how many Molagoras are invested into it. It removes all debuffs from a single target before healing them by 35% of Ruele's maximum health. It also grants them a barrier for 2 turns equal to 20% of Ruele of Light's maximum health. Her third skill, Light Ascending, is her signature skill and is what makes her so powerful. It is on a 4 to 5 turn cooldown depending on Molagora, and is also one of the few moves in all of Epic 7 that gives 4 souls after its Molagora. It revives a dead ally with full HP and invincibility for 1 turn, basically almost guaranteeing that that character will get a turn, barring any obvious debuffs or strips. So yeah, really, really powerful skill. As if that wasn't enough, if you use it on an ally that is alive, it removes all debuffs from them and heals them to full health, and also grants them that same 1 turn of invincibility. This move, in my opinion, is absolutely insane. It is one of the best moves in all of Epic 7 and is the source of Ruele's power. As long as Ruele is alive, it is incredibly difficult for any opponent to win the game unless they either use Extinction or remove Ruele of Light from the board. When you consider those facts, plus the fact that Ruele has arguably the best defensive stat spread in all of Epic 7, you can see why she's damn powerful and a top tier pick in a lot of metas. She's basically been relevant since the game came out, and it's because of how powerful Light Ascending is. When we take a look at her Soul Burn, it is a single target attack that cannot trigger any dual attacks, but in exchange, it will heal your entire party for 35% of Ruele of Light's maximum health. When it comes to Molagoras, Ruele of Light is one of those soul weavers that you're going to want to put a heavy amount of investment into. Normally, when we think about supporting characters in Epic 7, we don't normally think of them as characters that you're going to want to go to like plus 12 or plus 15 on. They're normally characters that are like plus 5 or plus 8. You're normally just sinking Molagoras into them to lower cooldowns or to get specific effect chance breakpoints. I will tell you right now, Ruele is probably not one of those characters. She is arguably one of the best soul weavers, though, in all of Epic 7, if not the best, so therefore it is worth it to actually max out the kit. For priorities, I would go for Light Ascending first. This is one of the strongest moves in all of Epic 7, and it is definitely worth your time to get it maxed out. Next, I would consider maxing out Light Pillar because of the extra healing potency. It does a decent chunk without it, but there's a noticeable difference when this move is maxed out. And finally, consider taking Key to an Oath to at least plus 4 for the extra 25% healing potency. Again, there is a noticeable difference between having this move not Molagora and Molagora. Before we talk about builds, let's quickly talk about the 3 simple rules you should follow for building and playing Besto Gyaru Ruele of Light. Number 1. Be tanky enough so that your Ruele survives any hits. A dead Ruele is useless. Number 2. Keep any debuffs off your Ruele at all times. A stunned or slept Ruele is useless. Number 3. Prioritize your survivability over the other heroes on your team. As long as your Ruele of Light is alive, Light Ascending can win you the game or get you out of any sticky situations. Got it? Good. Alright, on to the builds. So the first build I'm going to show you is a speed set build that you could also play on Revenge set if you so choose. Now I know what you're thinking, why would I ever want to play Revenge set? Isn't that terrible set that needs a buff? Well, maybe. I did a whole 18-minute or so video called The Case for Katie's where I try to explain using math that the sets might actually be better than most people are thinking they are. So, I'm not going to give you like all the details, but let's very quickly talk about why Revenge set is good for Ruele. Well, it synergizes super well with her actual kit. We need some amount of speed on this character to cycle her cooldowns and get off her heals and revives in a timely manner. This is why people play speed set in the first place. She's never going to actually go first, and honestly, you don't really want her to go first. She is a purely reaction-based character. If she goes first and nothing has happened yet, you're going to feel like you wasted your turn. Because she has Light Ascending, enemies will naturally want to attack her. Prioritizing other characters on her team is essentially pointless unless you are using Extinction. They either have to kill the Ruele, or they have to AoE down the whole team simultaneously, since her only AoE heal is her Soul Burn. In either case, her health will naturally be low enough where it's going to most likely either break even or exceed the performance of a speed set. The difference between a speed set and a revenge set is actually 14.7 speed when both characters are at 100% health. The difference between the average Ruele around 180 versus a speed of 195 Ruele isn't actually that important. Neither one's going first. And in most cases, both of those speed scores are going to end up going somewhere between 5th and 7th in a standard PvP game. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. In fact, if your Ruele is actually too fast, she might cut in front of a potential hard-hitting damage dealer like a slower counter Landy, in which case you're going to wish she ended up being, 7th or 8th to be able to heal up that potential damage. I personally play speed set on this character, but that's only because I don't feel like I have a revenge set that is actually good enough. With the current Epic 7 World Champion attributing some of his strength to winning to the revenge set Blue Crow that he played, I feel like my hypothesis might actually be correct that Revenge Ruele is definitely worth a look and something that is potentially very powerful. With that out of the way, let's take a look at the standard build. We want a Revenge or a Speed set as our main set with either Resistance or Immunity as the offset, whichever combination works best for you. The attack is 1237. This is just her base attack with an I-90 weapon. I don't even think I'm accounting for the artifact attack. You will definitely break this. 1800 defense. This is the highest amount of defense you'll get before you start getting the diminishing returns. You can go higher than this, but usually at this point, getting HP or flat health is better than taking any amount of defense. If you already have, like, say, an HP percentage neck and it has flat health on it, you can stat swap to flat or defense percentage to get more survivability if you're already over it, but in most cases, you just want to have more HP. 18k health is the lowest I would go. The higher you can go, the absolute highest you can go, that's the best for you. Your healing is going to end up scaling off this as well as your survivability, so again, yeah, pump it up as high as you can go. 185 speed. Usually you want to be somewhere between 175 to 195. 185 is basically the baseline, like the midpoint of where you kind of want to be, at least if you're on speed set. 175 is a-okay if you are on revenge set. So if you're trying to go that build, 175 is probably where I'd try to start shooting for first. 150 effect resistance, higher is better. 150 is the lowest that I would play for this build specifically. 200+% is ideal. When I try to rebuild this character in Revenge, I'm definitely trying to hit at least 190. So when we take a look at the right side, HP percentage neck, HP percentage or effect resistance ring. I feel like building her with an ER ring is definitely easier. Speed boots, again, we really want to cycle those turns. As a note, when it comes to the ER ring and the speed boots specifically, you want to try to prioritize gear that has a stat line that's like HP percentage, flat health, defense percentage, flat defense. Or maybe some amount of speed in there. You definitely want the percentage and the flat stats in order to hit the goals. Those kinds of gear are invaluable for this character. I know a lot of people try to overlook flat stats, but in this case, this is a character where you definitely want to try to get flat stats that go to complement the percentage stats. When we take a look at the actual artifact, we want to be on Water's Origin. This gives us added survivability as well as some CR pushing. It basically protects your Ruele, lets her cycle turns, and get off those clutch heals because she might jump ahead here or there. I personally prefer this one, but there are lots of other options based on your playstyle. If you're more of an aggressive player, you can consider something like Idol's Cheer. If you're afraid of getting a ton of AoE thrown in your face, you could go Touch of Rekos. And if your gear just isn't good enough for your Ruele to survive, you could consider something like Proof of Valor. Again, as a quick note before we move past it, I want to highlight the difference between the speed differential between speed and revenge set on your screen. You can see that these are the desired stats between the two of them. I'll show you the speed one first, and then I will move on to the revenge set, and you can see it's roughly 15 speed slower, but everything else is the same. Again, even at the 15 speed that is lower than the speed set, once you start taking damage, you will most likely either break or exceed this performance, so don't worry about the initial speed loss. Alright, and lastly, let's talk about the tanky build. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wasn't the previous 1800 defense build the tanky build? Well, yes, but this one's even tankier than that. And it is a direct result to the changes that happened in, I believe, Season 3 of World Arena. For those of you who don't know, now in World Arena, the effectiveness scales with everybody as Battle Frenzy goes up. That means effect resistance basically, isn't valuable in Frenzy 6, Frenzy 7, or higher. It's just not really that good. It's super easy for anyone to land any kind of debuff. So for that reason, this is the build that a lot of the high champion and legend players have decided to go with. They are just forsaking effect resistance entirely because they just, I guess, don't like the changes that were made. So they are like, we'll just get more speed and more bulk out of it and leave the effect resistance to like our turn 1 cleansers like our DN or DJ Basar. So couple things to point out. If you are going to draft Ruele of Light when she's on this build, make sure you bring a cleanser. And 2, like I said, you see this a lot in high champion and legend RTA. That does not necessarily mean it is superior to the previous build. Again, it is just personal preference that some players have decided to go with because of the changes that were made to World Arena. So let's just jump right into the build. We want her on speed set. You could play her on revenge set here for the reasons we talked about with the previous build. I personally haven't tested it, and I don't know anyone who has actually played this style of Ruele with the revenge build, so I'd caution against it, but in theory, it should probably still work. You definitely want her on immunity set for this build. She doesn't have any effect resistance. Any kind of protection is A-okay and great here. When we take a look at the actual stats, attack hasn't really changed. Defense is still 1800 for the same reasons we talked about with the previous build. 21k or higher HP, again, for the same reasons. Higher scaling, healing, and better survivability. That's one of the main reasons we've forsaken effect resistance entirely, is just so we could get those higher bulk stats. 205 speed. Again, we want a little bit more speed. We can basically juice our Ruele a little bit more for that reason. Again, don't go too fast for the same reasons we talked about in the previous video. We're just trying to eke every other stat up a little bit higher at the expense of losing all of our effect resistance, which you can see is 0. When we take a look at the right side, HP percentage neck, HP percentage ring, and speed boots. The obvious artifact that you're playing here is Wondrous Potion Vial to supplement the fact that you literally have 0 ER, and if your cleanser dies, this is the only line of protection that you're going to have to save your Ruele. Talking about teammates for Ruele, this is something she certainly doesn't lack. She is so well-rounded that she works in quite a lot of scenarios with quite a lot of characters in this game. She's not the best in every situation, but she's a pretty damn good pick in a lot of situations. The standouts for teammates obviously are powerful Arius holders such as Fallen Cecilia and Blue Crow, and she's also really good with Soul Weavers that can back her up on the healing and provide not only buffs but additional cleanses. Think of things like DN or Destina. When we talk about compositions you want to draft her in, you usually want to draft her alongside one Arius holder, and then in the third slot you want to pick either a Bruiser or another Soul Weaver to back her up like we talked about before, and the last pick is usually a powerful DPS that could solo a whole team that is potentially difficult to kill. Think of things like Spectre Tenebria or Tempest Surin. Let's talk about matchups. We'll do the good ones because that's the easiest to get out of the way. The good matchups are basically anything that's not the bad matchups. I know that sounds ridiculous, but Ruele works really well in a lot of scenarios. You could pick her second and feel pretty good about the draft, or you could pick her late in like a 4th or a 5th slot if you think the team just simply can't deal with a Ruele. Just really strong and usually ends up forcing a ban, and if not, you have a pretty good chance of winning as long as you're smart about it. So yeah, pretty good overall. When we take a look at the bad matchups, things that one-shot her, think of things like Challenger Dominiel or Dark Corvus, are particularly bad. Luckily for us, Dark Corvus doesn't really see much play because of the aforementioned World Arena changes, and Cleave is on a decline, so you won't really be seeing C-Dom too much. And usually when you're drafting Ruele, you're pretty, anti-Cleave anyway because of how bulky the team usually is when she's drafted with it. So yeah, those are the two that stand out in my mind. Other things to be aware of are really fast, high effectiveness cooldown resetters. Think of things such as Faithless Lidica. If she resets the Ruele and then they cleave through your team anyway, you just don't have a revive, so you can't really mount a comeback. But yeah, that's pretty much the only things I can really think of. Blood Moon Haste, contrary to popular belief, isn't really a bad matchup. It's like a skill-based matchup, like a 5-5. Because Ruele can use her revive as a full heal, you can basically just protect your allies and they'll never end up dying. And as long as you just don't ever end up needing to burn the res on a character that ends up dying, the Blood Moon Haste will just never become a factor. So yeah, it really depends on the picks, the bans, and how both players play the matchup. So I just wanted to get that common misconception out of the way. And finally, let's talk about, should you pull for Ruele of Light? And the answer is a resounding yes, 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 yes. More so than any other character in the game, I feel like Ruele of Light adds a ton of value to your account. And that's for a couple of reasons, which I did talk about in my Moonlight Connection Hero video, but I'll quickly try to summarize them here. This is the only character in all of Epic 7 history, from beginning until present, that has received no changes whatsoever, no buffs, no nerfs, and she is still a meta-relevant hero. This is like the character that you can pick up and feel incredibly good about it. She will almost always, I feel like, give your account some incredible amount of value, and that's largely because she is the best Soul Weaver in most game modes, in most scenarios. And if she's not, she's easily in the conversation. Usually the only other Soul Weavers that are brought up alongside her are characters like Diane, Maid Chloe, and in PvE specifically, Tamarin. Those are pretty much like the 4 best Soul Weavers in the game, and in a lot of scenarios, Ruele is either number 1 or number 2 for that answer. So if you want a powerful Soul Weaver, you definitely should pick this up. This is an excellent character also, by the way, for new players. It will help you clear a lot of hard content. If you're struggling in Abyss, you're struggling in Hell Raid, this character will give you a massive amount of, a massive safety net, I should say. And then finally, if you guys pay attention to competitive play at all, this character, Ruele of Light, she was actually picked in the Epic 7 World Championship Finals, and I don't really know of any higher thing I can point out than that, because if the character is good enough to be played on the world stage at the absolute highest level in the final match, that should just be a testament in and of itself, I feel like, to how good the character actually is. The only reasons really to not pull for Ruele of Light is if you are hoping to pull Straze and you just don't have the resources. So if you have a favorite in mind that's coming up, by all means save. And then other than that, maybe you're a Cleave player and you don't really like the Knight or Bruiser style gameplay that she promotes. But again, honestly, and it is my opinion, and I've said it in a number of other videos, I really don't feel like any other Moonlight 5-star in Epic 7 adds more to your account than Ruele of Light. She is phenomenal. And that's going to be it for this video. If it helped you out at all, consider leaving me a like or a subscribe. It helps me out a ton here at this channel. And if you think this video will help your friends or guildmates, by all means share it with them and let me know down in the comments below what you all want to see next. Until then, enjoy the rest of your week, and I'll catch you all later.